Welcome to Gratitude Space Radio. I'm your host, Chris Palmore, and I've got my new friend, John Davis, on the line. How you doing, John?
I am doing great, and I am grateful for that music you were just playing because that was really fun and funky.
Oh, thanks, man. That was a little Logic Pro Studio, me just putting something together I can legally use.
And aren't we grateful for that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate you joining me today. I want to share a little love for a little gratitude for Podmatch. I was thinking, I always like to this is a grateful moment. We don't know each other. We're sitting here we're going to have a great conversation. We're here being present, and when these things happen, I always like to go, well, how they happen? Who am I grateful to? And specifically, for me getting to you is a website called Podmatch, and I had a friend on Facebook, through a group. I think it's Michael Roderick. I think he shared it on one of our groups. Said you should check out this place. So, bing bang, here we are, and I'm grateful for those people and the platform for bringing us together.
Well, yeah, it's a great platform. Actually, over the past 2 months, I've done 27 interviews, and I've got 18 in queue right now, and it's really very helpful. And I'll tell you what, this is not, we're not sponsored by Podmatch.
No, we're not. We're just sharing gratitude. Yes. Yeah.
Right. That platform really helps me out because what it did for me was it organized me, because all of my interviews are in queue, and I can see the date and the time, and it's all there. And then the coolest part is that they send out things so we can review each other, and at the end it sends me something so I can review you on Apple, and so it's really it's an awesome site. I just found it myself, and I'm really very impressed so far.
Yeah, this is you were my first encounter, which is great, and I've already connected with a couple other people and had some conversations. So just what you're talking about is awesome about the scheduling and how we're assisting each other, but just the sheer fact that I'm seeing these people I've never heard of in my life, and I'm looking at them going, wow, I can reach out to these people and the minimum have a conversation. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Just by itself, right?
You're bumping into when you have a podcast, you're always struggling. Who am I going to get? Who am I going to bring on? And this place gives you a place to just go out and grab it. So it's that's amazing. I started a podcast myself, and I'm just a couple episodes in, so I'm like, well, I'm not worried about finding a guest when I get to that point, because I know right where I'm going.
Right, for sure. Well, for people, John, I'd love for you to share, just share a little bit about who you are and your passions, and we can start from there. Yeah.
Okay, that's a unique story because I have so many passions in my life.
Oh.
In my life. Well, I'll start back when I was in my 20s. I had this dream of being a professional fight director and stuntman. I wanted to move out and go out and do real physical things in the world, and do really fun, crazy things, physical things in the world. And I started working at Renaissance festivals, of all things. And for those of you who don't know what Renaissance festivals are, that basically means I was wearing tights and living in the woods. But I was doing these Renaissance festivals, and I had this dream of being a fight director, and I ended up meeting these two gentlemen who were two of the top fight directors in the world, and they thought I had talent, and so they offered me their training for free, and so wow. I started really getting into it, started getting the martial arts, and was very passionate about the fact that I wanted to be a stuntman. And then 22 years old, I was asked by a friend of mine to help him unload his van. He was a professional potter. He made beautiful pottery. Still does make beautiful pottery. And he asked me to come out to his house and help him unload his van. His van was filled with 80-pound boxes of clay. And I climbed up in that van, and I picked up my first box, the very first one, and I lifted it, and I twisted, and I set that box down, and my back separated into two. And when I say separated into two, the upper half of my spine dislocated from my lower half and actually pinched off my spinal column, leaving me paralyzed. They took me to the hospital. The doctor said, John, you have a condition known as spina bifida occulta. I said, Gesundheit, because I had no idea what that meant. He said, you can give up on your dreams, basically. He said, you're done. No stunt work, no physical career. You need to find a sedentary career. And that put me into a very dark place. I could be honest when I say I contemplated suicide and various other things in my life. But I was able to find some new momentum when someone gave me a book called The Tao of Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee. And in that book, his book it's about the philosophy of martial arts more so than about a martial art in general. And there's a part in there he talks about flexibility, mental flexibility, being like water. And so I then later found out that he wrote that book when he was in traction and couldn't do martial arts and was just told that he would never do martial arts. And then he actually went on and did every movie we know him for after that. So here I was, wanting to be a stuntman, wanting to be a fight director, lying in a hospital bed, doctor telling me I can't. And then I decided, no, I'm going to take my own life into my hands. I'm not going to live his belief. I'm going to live mine. I'm going to become a fight director. I'm going to become a stuntman. I'm going to do those things. And I just started making successful present moments. And so today I'm just moving my toes. Tomorrow I'm moving my ankles. After a month, I was sitting up in bed. I was actually able to sit up, which was a milestone because they never thought I'd be able to do anything ever again. And then a year goes by and I'm back to what I would consider normal, not as big and buff and strong as I was beforehand, but just basically normal. And then at a year and 6 months, I jumped off a 3-story tower into a fall pad. and since then, I've done over 4,000 live comedy sword fighting shows all over the world, including the front lines of both Iraq and Afghanistan on 6 USO tours. I've worked with Hollywood stars. I've done rode towers down into fall pads. I've done zip lines over audiences 300 feet in the air. I've done so much physical things that doctors told me I never would be able to do. But by claiming my own power, my own interaction hero, as I call it, and then moving forward. But then it became you asked about my passion, and that was really an important question because at that point in my life, my passion was stunt work. And as I started doing those shows and I started being able to deliver more value, those going to the front lines of Iraq and Afghanistan will change your perspective on a lot of things because you're starting to see how you can give back to people. And my comedy show, I realized after a while I was doing that comedy show and that I was enjoying the time after the show as much, if not more, than when I was on the show. Because after the show, I was helping people achieve their goals and break past their limiting beliefs and move forward using my own life experiences. And so I decided I got to find a way to do those things that I like to do with whips and nunchucks and crazy stuff like that, but also be able to bring value to people's lives and take them to that next level of their own self. And so I created a thing called the Corporate Action Hero. And I go out into the world and I do these motivational, inspirational speeches. And my passion right now is to awaken as many people to their own inner power as possible. And the way I do that is through fun, interactive programs, like I said. But one of my biggest things that I do is in my main keynote, the last thing I do is I bring the most timid person I can find in my audience to the stage. And in under 5 minutes' time, they learn to crack a whip and take targets out of my hand. And it's life-changing for them because they're so empowered because now they've had this experience where they can just do this amazing skill. And because I chose a timid person, the entire audience is full of their peers who know them to be a timid person. The audience knows, well, if they can do it, so can I. So I feel like I'm affecting more. So my passion right now is literally to awaken people to their own power.
That's beautiful, John. There was so much good in that. I was hearing all the grateful moments. And I was holding my questions, doing my best to listen. So I appreciate you sharing that. I wanted to step back and go, for example, who were the two men that said that they would train you, for free to be a stuntman? Can you share a little more about them?
Payson Burt and Brad Waller. Brad Waller and Payson was amazing guy. He gave me some training, and then Brad was the biggest of them all. He went on to actually create an organization called the International Order of the Sword and Pen, which is a fascinating organization because what that organization does is it brings fight directors from all over the world together every other year. And the fight directors come out of the goodness of their heart. They basically get a ticket to come, and they get fed while they're there. They get no other pay. And for a week, all these fight directors, all these stunt people come together, and they just share knowledge. And they're not, a lot of times you get into an organization like that, they're very closed-circled. And this organization brings in not only professional stunt people and film or stage people, but it brings in real martial artists who can teach skills. Because as fight directors, we want to learn as many skills as we can. And so it really is an event that brings together people who are just doing it out of the goodness of their heart. And they're having a good time while they're doing it. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But you know, they're really coming together to share and to create something new. And Brad created that organization, and it has just gone wildfire. And now Brad he's basically a scholar, and he's doing a lot of work on historical fighting styles and working through manuals. And he's an amazing, amazing man. But he's one of those guys that always has a positive attitude. Mm-hmm. And we used to joke about Brad that if you're in a stage combat with Brad and you accidentally stabbed your partner in the eye with a sword, Brad would say, "Well, that's one way to do it, but can we try it a different way?" Because we've never seen him go negative on anything. We've never seen him mad. We've never seen him. He was always just so positive and always giving positive reinforcement, which was lovely.
What a beautiful story. So he saw you. You said that they saw you perform, and then he just came up. You all became friends, and they were like, "We see potential." And then he basically saw the potential in you. Was like, "I want to train you." And
well, let me tell you his exact words.
Oh, please.
Brad's exact words were, "John, I have watched you this year. I have seen a lot of talent in you as an actor and a combatant, and I really want to be a part of your growth.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to offer you my training for free." Now, at the time, Brad was the fight choreographer and fight instructor in residence at the Folger Shakespeare Library in Washington, D.C. So you're talking about the real deal, you know?
Right.
And so I was actually taking my training at the Folger Library. So it was really an overwhelmingly powerful thing. And I'll tell you an interesting personal fact. And I don't delve into my personal life very often, but I'll do it on this one because I think it shares with you the power of just a kind word or a kind positive reinforcement. My father was an alcoholic abuser, and he had 7 kids. I was number 6 of 7, and of the 7 kids, I was the one he did not like, and I was the one who got the brunt of the negativity and the abuse, the emotional abuse specifically, and I had very low self-esteem before I took my new goal to become a stuntman. And Brad's words that day meant more to me than anything I could possibly share with you right here and now, because those words still brings tears to my eyes because I had never had that positive reinforcement. And I'm so grateful for Brad, because Brad, and years later I was at the Patty Crane workshop, which is that workshop I was telling you about, and they were giving Brad an award, and I just sobbed like a baby because I thought the man needed it. I thought the man deserved it, and I just sobbed like a baby. Big, giant, tough stuntman fight director guy just weeping into his beer. Terrible. This is not beer, by the way. This is coffee.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that, man. That's so beautiful. I love how he said, I want to be a part of your growth. I want to, like, it's like, that's such a, I want to be what, that's just the phrasing. That's beautiful, man.
That's why I wanted to give you his exact words, because I thought that line was the most powerful thing he said. I want to be part of your growth. That's an acceptance. That's a I see you as something special. They say namaste, meaning I recognize the greatness inside of you, right? And so you're like, I see that within you, and I want to be a part of that because it's something that I can give to you as well. So it's just so beautiful, I thought.
Oh yeah, it is, man. I have a very fond memory of the first conversation I had with one of my mentors and best friends in this, in Thomas Kalopoulos. I remember after I shared my gratitude story and the things I were doing, with him, and he's a keynote speaker and an author, and he just said to me, he said, "Chris," he's like, what can I do to help you? Like, it was just it just took me back so much, because that's not when I talked to him, just to get him, on the phone, I was like, "Would you like to work on the gratitude project together?" And just that he gave me his time, and then after he allowed me to talk for most of that time, he just was just open to like, how can I he didn't know me from Adam. He's like, "How can I help you? How can I assist you in what you're doing?"
What I find really interesting is some of the greatest people in the world have gotten their greatness by being that way. I have a very good friend who is one of the top motivational speakers on earth right now. His name's Dan Thurman. He was the president of the National Speakers Association, the last president. And he is an amazing guy. And Dan, he says, "What can I do for you? How can I help you?" I'm not nearly along the path of speaking as he is. I've been in for 10 years. He's been in for 20 some odd years, right? And he is like very, very well known. But he is like, no, I am here as part of you, part of your growth, part of your experience. I'm here to help. And he means it. He is one of those guys that really, and I'll tell you what, if anybody wants to look into amazing speakers besides myself, of course.
Right.
Look into danthurman.com, THURMON. He's an amazing guy. Amazing guy.
I appreciate you mentioning him, and yeah, it definitely. I feel like the people in my life that stick out, just like your friend Dan, it's like they show up and they want to help, and they get that. They do it because it feels good. Obviously, that's why but they get that it's like the truth of the matter is the more goodness and help you put out in the world, the better your life's going to be. Period. What does that mean? I don't know, but it's just what it is. I don't know what that means for any individual, but it is true. And there's a lot of reasons. Just for example, in the gratitude realm, it's like when you help somebody else, you're becoming present and you're focusing on somebody else. You're focusing on them, which allows you, if you are in a moment of distress or your monkey mind's in a negative place, you're taking a break and stopping this merry-go-round to focus on somebody else and being helpful. And it's just so much. It's so healthy. It's so healthy.
Well, you know what? It's funny. I call myself the corporate action hero, but there's a very specific reason why I call myself an action hero. First of all, you have to know the difference between action heroes and superheroes. Superheroes are very much different. The superheroes wear their underwear on the outside of their pants and have bad fashion sense and have radiated by some sort of goo and have superpowers, right? But action heroes are something very different. Action means to create motion, start momentum, or to do something. Hero is someone who achieves an extraordinary result in service of others. And so I try to live my life as someone who does something to achieve extraordinary results in service of others. And people say that, oh yeah, your brand is great. It's not a brand, it's a lifestyle.
Right.
Like, so for instance, I went to the dry cleaners after one of my speeches to drop off my suits. And the lady said behind the counter, says, what's your email address so I can look you up? And I just gave her one of my business cards. And she said, oh my God, you're a speaker. I want to be a speaker. So the next 2 hours I sat there and I said, what can we do? How can I get you there? What can I do for you? And we sat there and we figured it out. And then that evil little woman went out and got her first speech as a TEDx speech. and I was like, oh my God, that's so amazing. So I brought her on my podcast. We interviewed her. We talked to her. And she says, John, what you did for me was so amazing. You showed me everything I needed to do. You took me where I wanted to go. And they liked me so much at the TEDx here local that they asked me to be a part of the judging panel. And I'm now in charge of the judging panel for TEDx. And I want you to do the next TEDx we do.
Wow.
So your good deeds come back. Your good deeds come back. And you just have to remember that you don't look for the success, don't look for the accolades. Just look for doing something good for people. And it's going to come back to you anyway.
That's a beautiful story. I love that so much. I had something in the podcast last week, and we just got back to that whole idea of, wherever you go, making wherever you left a better place than it was. And that's I asked, there's a question I asked a lot of guests. I asked them, if you were going to explain gratitude to a 10-year-old, what would you say? And one of the answers was, his guy who's a father, he said, well, it'd be basically if we went and had a picnic that we would leave the space better than it was,
Right.
Last week, my friend Naif said this very similar thing, and I just thought, and that's what you did when you're present, right? When you're actually looking at somebody, when they're checking you out, you're allowing them to let them know they are important. You see them, and then those little connections happen, like you said. She asked this, you hand the business card. That sparks the conversation. Next thing you know, you're having a deep conversation because you're being present with her, because you want to help her, because you are something that she's inspired to being, or some elements of it. And then, like we said, the amazing thing about the story is, then she took action. You found out about it. She got on TEDx, and now she's in the position going, John, I want to get you into my events.
Right, which is awesome. Right?
Which is, it's and that's just because you are who you are and you show up and you want to help people. That's, that's just what happens.
and that is how my life has always been. But you said something that was imperative. You kept saying, you said it multiple times. You said being present. There's only one moment we live, and it's the present moment. You can't go to the store next Thursday right now. You can't go to the store last Thursday right now. You can only live right here and now. And if you break it down to an interesting thing, I'm a student of spirituality. I study all religions, and I'm a recovering Catholic that's literally gone out there and found a better path for myself. And I'm not asking anybody else to follow me. I'm asking because I think spirituality is personal. But one of the things that I find interesting in the Bible, that it's really an interesting one, is Jesus said, "Whatever you ask in God's name is granted." Moses talked to God on top of the Mount Sinai, and he said, "What's your name?" And the bush said, "I am." So I am, not I will be, not I was, I am. So whatever you're asking in your present moment, I am. Whatever comes after that is what you're creating into your experience. But all your past is a collection of present moment memories. All your future is a place where you set goals for present moments that are going to come to you in the future, right? But the toughest part is people sitting here in this present moment, and they access all this subconscious belief from their past traumas, and they recycle them here in the present because they're so focused there, right? Then they're also sitting here in this moment, and they're looking at that giant goal they want to achieve that's way out there in front of them, and they're thinking, "Oh, I got to get to it." So they're not living present; they're trying to live there. The reality of it is the small present moment successes that you create in this present moment build upon each other, and that big giant success comes to you and surrounds your present moment. You don't have to get to it. It's coming to you depending on what you do here and now. So live with gratitude. Live with intention of doing positive things. Don't focus on the negative aspects or the things in the past that were bad. Instead, start stacking positive, grateful moments behind you, so you're changing your subconscious belief behind you that you're accessing from.
That's beautiful. I loved your I loved your phrasing of everything. Like I think about that a lot too. And I had a great author, Hector Garcia, wrote a book called Ichi Go Ichi, and basically that's the phrase they say in the Japanese tea ceremonies, and it basically means you're saying it to the person at the beginning, at the end. It's basically letting the person know that this is special. This will never happen again. And the reality of it is every moment, like you said, every moment we're talking about is unique, because it doesn't matter if we walk down the same stream, we're not the same person. We could be wearing the same clothes. You and I could talk a year from now, the same backdrop and everything, right? We're not the same people. It's not the same moment. Each moment is, and the whole idea, it's the past is the past. The future is something, it is only an idea. It's a construct, but the present is right now. The present is a gift.
And it's the only moment you can have thought, word, and deed actually come together.
Exactly. Yeah. This is all there is. It's nice to look in the future, but the future is what it may be, and who knows? Maybe you're not. It's good to plan, but at the same time, be in the headspace of like, now is what we need. Being here now is what's important. So I completely agree with what you're saying, and I love the idea of what just different mechanisms that bring us into the present moment, like we were talking about when we think of other people and being in service.
Yeah, when I hear someone talking about those big goals they set for themselves, and I can hear right when in their present moment words that they're not taking action. You'll hear them say, "I am wanting, I am needing, I am hoping, I am trying," right? And those words are inactive, right? And so I get them to the space where I'm taking those words out of the vocabulary. I'm saying, "No, I am creating, I am enjoying, I am living this moment fully here and now, and I am, A lot of times people will be working towards their goal, and something will come up that seems contrary to what they're trying to achieve. And the first thing they do is they smack themselves on top of the head and say, "I'm so dumb." I mean, that's exactly why I'm bald. But the thing is, I had to change my perspective around it because of, when I'm lying in that bed and that doctor's telling me I can't, I have to change my perspective, not his, because he's looking at a picture on an X-ray and saying, "Okay, you're done."
Right.
He has no idea what fires within me. He doesn't know what my interaction hero is, and my interaction hero says, "No, I'm empowered. I'm going to do something." And so, those moments of today, I'm just going to try to wiggle my toes, were moments, and those moments stacked upon each other And then later on, I literally jumped off towers and did sword fights and crazy, wild things that most people don't get to do, and loved every minute of it. And but when those moments didn't go well, I had to train my mind to go, well, that's just silly. you know,
Right.
something didn't go right. I just go, that's silly. Rather than beating myself up, rather than getting the self-defeating talk, I just decided that those moments were silly because I'm achieving my goal. It's a
Right.
very, very different mindset.
Yeah, it. I totally get the self talk, and when I hear it, just like you're saying, it's a red flag. Certain people in my life I talk to, they'll say I wish and I hope, and I'm sitting there, just like you're saying, going, these aren't wishes. Like, okay, great example and point. My dad is. I love my father very much. He said so many times to me, "I wish I could play an instrument." I've heard it so many times, right? And I've said it, and I occasionally I'll go, well, you can. There are people that are in their 70s that learn how to play instruments. It's not. It's a. Just because I hear it so much, I got to keep reinforcing. It isn't like he has hands, right? So it's not like
Right.
he's not saying something like he can't play a guitar because he doesn't have hands. But I hear things like that, or I would love to do this or that, and I'm just like thinking. I'm thinking. I think, well, you can if you wanted to. It's like, oh, I wish the house. I wish I could keep. I wish I could be organized, right? These are all things that are within human elements of people, right? They're
Right.
they're daily decisions. It's like, how do you keep the room clean? Well, when you make a mess, you immediately clean up afterwards. That way, when you come back, it's clean, right? Like
Right.
it's like, there's like, how do we get people to, I know for myself, like maybe I need to have a trigger where if I don't do something, I have to pay money because I know that to me, the loss of money will motivate me to do what I need to do. Like what are the triggers that get you to do what you want to do? And we just, you just haven't been doing them.
Right. When I'm coaching somebody in those moments, it's a very, very interesting thing. I use what's known as a trance statement, something that makes their mind go, "Huh?" Right? And the statement is, "So when is now a good time?" Right? Because
Right.
when is now? It's contradictory, but what it does, it makes them go, "Oh, I could do it now." Right? Right? It makes their mind click a little bit. So I literally ask them, "When is now a good time?" Because that's just a choice.
Right.
Right now is a good time to do it. Right. So people don't do things and don't take actions because they're afraid of not being able to do them, or afraid of the hard work of doing them. Right.
Or failure.
And
Yeah.
and they have to be grateful for the fact that they can do them, that they have that ability to do them, that they. In my life as a fight director, you have to have a lot of skills, right? And I do whips, I do nunchucks, I do martial arts, I do Elizabethan sword play and medieval sword fighting, and all kinds of fight styles. I spent thousands of dollars to feel completely stupid. Right? I spent thousands of dollars to go work with people who made me feel awkward and made me feel like I was just not getting it. But I was grateful for every moment of it because those are the moments you go through to get to doing it correctly and doing it right. And those moments gave me opportunities to meet amazing people. Like, I actually crossed swords with a man named Patty Crane. I mentioned his name earlier. That workshop is named after him. You probably don't know who that is, but Patty Crane was Errol Flynn's stunt double.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so I actually crossed swords with Errol Flynn's stunt double, a guy who actually fought across from Basil Rathbone. I got to meet these amazing heroes of mine and just because I kept putting myself in those places, and because those gentlemen who back in the day who said, you have talent, let me help you. After they said that, I started doing things to make me feel awkward, right? And
Right.
and I ended up going to these workshops up in Canada at the Patty Crane workshops, and I'm surrounded by people who know so much more than I do about various aspects, and I take every one of their classes still today when I go, because I want to go in there. I want to feel awkward. I want to have those moments of being uncomfortable. My friend Dan, who I mentioned earlier, he would say, put yourself off balance on purpose. Put yourself out there. Start a momentum towards something. No matter what happens, it's going to be uncomfortable at first, but you're going to figure it out. You're going to get there.
Yeah, going back to in the same. I have a friend named Bobby Coons, and he has a book called The Someday Solution, and his whole thing was like, people always say someday, and he's like, his thing is like, I looked on a calendar. There isn't a day called someday. It's like, the someday is like someday will never happen. Just like I loved your phrasing and go, when is now a good time? Like
Right.
when should we start? And I love the little the little wins, like you said. You started wiggling, you started wiggling your toes and you're in the hospital, and then you're building momentum from these little steps that that you're celebrating. that
Right.
it's moving. You're feeling more alive. And speaking back to your hospital time, I was curious, how did you come across the Bruce Lee book? Because obviously you I'm curious. You're in the hospital and you get this book, and obviously it resonates for. I loved how you shared that he wrote that when he was in traction before he went and did it. That's what a awesome element there of that story. But I'm curious again, how did the book get in your lap?
Well, you know what? When you find yourself in a situation like that, you are very much awakened to the fact that you have a community around you all the time, and you suddenly find yourself in a position where you see who is really there for you. I'm very grateful. I have family who are there. We're there for each other. Period. Right. I have friends who are there for me no matter what. I have friends right now that if they called me, I'd hop in my car and I'd drive 15 hours to go get them. I would do whatever I need. Right. We have that kind of community, but we don't appreciate or have gratitude for that kind of community until we actually see that community in action. And this was handed to me by a friend of mine who knew what I was going through and knew that there was something in there that would help me. And so he walked into the hospital room and gave me the book. And the book really was, when he handed it to me, it was almost like, you're handing me a martial arts book when I was just told I can't do it. He says, read it. Just read it. And so I said, okay. So I read it. And watch it, reading what he was talking about in there. And like I said, he wrote it when he was in traction. But, knowing now, especially, what he overcame to do that. He has a mindset that most people don't know. He was one of the originators of protein shakes. Yeah, he set a goal for himself to be the greatest martial artist that ever lived after he came to the United States, which is another interesting thing. He had everything he'd ever done. He excelled at, and in China, he did American style boxing and beat the champion before he left China. He was a championship cha-cha dancer.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, he was a championship cha-cha dancer. He was a movie star when he was 7 years old in China. He was already doing movies as a child actor, but as he was always playing the troublemaking kid, right? So he's all these things. Comes to the United States because he ended up in China. He ended up beating up one of the mafia leader's sons, and they said, leave the country, right? So his dad said, leave the country. So he came over. Got here, he was no longer able to reach the goals that he had set for himself in Hong Kong. His original goal was to be the greatest martial artist in Hong Kong. Got to the West Coast here and said, okay, now I'm going to be the greatest martial artist that ever lived. So to do that, he did the first thing we do when we set a big goal like that. He started to educate himself, so he started studying nutrition. And he said, well, if I take powdered milk and egg and vitamins and liver tablets and I grind them up and I make a protein shake, that will feed my body better than any of the foods that I can eat, right? So he starts doing these protein shakes. Then he says, okay, to be the greatest martial artist, I have to work certain muscle groups that these free weights aren't working. So he starts creating different machines in cable work that, to hit these certain muscle groups. You can find those machines in every gym in the United States right now, because he created it because his idea was moving forward, and then he moved on to become Kato and all the movies we know him for, right? But it was all through that adversity, that mindset of, I can do anything. This is one of the reasons why I don't, I'm one of those guys who doesn't believe in affirmations. And the reason I don't believe in affirmations is because I think the word itself means I'm trying to shore up something that's not stable. I'm trying to affirm it, right? I believe in declarations. I declare what I'm doing, and I do them with full faith. I have this system I call the 5 Fs, and it's fearlessly focus with faith, follow through with flexibility. You've got to first set your fears aside, get focused on your outcome, have faith and confidence that you can, then actually take an action. And when something comes up that seems contrary to what you're trying to achieve, then you realize that came up because you set a goal, and that came up because it's something that needs to be addressed for you to get your goal. So you're in constant motion towards a goal, and through this process, you break yourself out of your limiting beliefs and your fears, and you achieve.
Yeah, I love that, and you know, I love the whole thing. I like the flexibility at the end, and I think that a lot. And I'm to speak to that. You know, for instance, releasing my book this last year, I realized that as a creative person wanting to release something out in the world, my main thing was that I got the book done, and it exists, and that by itself. That was my goal, was getting the book, having it exist. Obviously I want a lot of people to read it, but that's not the intention of the book. Wasn't it has to sell 10,000 copies, because if I say that's the intention and I'm putting it on other people, then I'm gonna let myself down, and hopefully it does, or but I can't have the goal be it has to be a New York Times bestseller, because that's not within my control. Within Chris's control is releasing a book, so, and then just being flexible in how that happens, keeping things within reason of what I can control, and then hoping for the best.
Right. And the whole concept of getting a book to be a New York Times bestseller is less about the quality of the book, which is the most important thing in my opinion.
Right.
And more about the marketing of the book.
It's true.
And because with like Amazon being number one on Amazon, it literally is about getting all of your friends to go on there and review the book, right? So that's how you rise in the rankings. So it's literally about the marketing. It's not about the book. But the book, a book that is not good, will not stay on that for very long, because sometimes it's an artificial bestseller.
Right.
Sometimes it's just because they've artificially pumped it up. The books that really last and really affect people long term are the ones that, if you look on the bestseller list, the Tao Te Ching is still on there.
Yeah.
There are still books in there that affect lives in big ways. So putting out quality first is important, because that's longevity.
For sure. Are there any speaking of books, are there any books you've read recently you'd recommend?
The one that I always go back to is Dan, and I keep talking about Dan Thurman because he just impresses me so much. His book is called Off Balance on Purpose, and it's an easy read, but it really puts you in the mindset of throwing yourself out of your comfort zone and going towards your goals and reaching those performances that you've always wanted to do. He's a juggler and a unicycle rider and a tightrope walker, and he does all these crazy things. But he said every time he's got a new skill, it's always because he's put himself off balance on purpose, right? And he says when you're riding a unicycle, if you want to go forward, you have to put yourself off balance to create the motion forward. And life is about change. Life is about motion. And if you think about life just like water in the wild, if water is rushing downhill in a stream, it's full of life-giving oxygen. It's healthy. Take that same water and put it into a puddle and let it stagnate. It becomes poisonous and gets filled with eggs from the insect. And so it becomes a stagnant, nasty mire. And that, if you're not continually putting yourself into motion towards a goal, you're going to stagnate. You're going to come to a place where your life is going to become less and less enjoyable. There's going to be less and less to be grateful for, because you're not putting yourself off balance on purpose, as Dan would say. You're not putting yourself towards something, and you're not creating that motion forward.
That's beautiful, and it made me think. I interviewed a friend this last week, and when he was going through his divorce, his counselor just said, get out there and say yes. And I think that so much speaks to being flexible, moving, getting yourself out of your comfort zone, right? Because if you're in a depression, you don't want to go see people. You don't want to meet new people. You don't want to go outside. But if you could set the mind to go, I'm just going to say yes when the opportunity comes up. I'm just going to go yes. And there you go, right? You've gotten yourself out. You're amongst people, and then anything can happen.
Well, I am an expert on that divorce thing, because they call me Triple X because I have 3 of them. But let me tell you,
you're not Vin Diesel.
Okay. No. Although we have the same hairstyle. I'll tell you the greatest lessons I learned from that, though.
Please.
From those 3, and It was, and I'm so grateful for all of them because they all taught me lessons. Some of them were more painful than others, but
Yeah.
but the biggest lesson I learned in all of that is for you to be loved, you have to be you fully. And when you get into a marriage and you give yourself up for somebody else's desires or what for somebody else's expectations, you actually are not the person that they started dating. And so for me personally, I'd get in those relationships and they would throw expectations. You should be more like my father. You should have a different job than what you're doing. You should, those expectations. And I tried to model myself around what my three wives wanted. And, for you to be, I often find people who, they break up with someone and then they say, they were the love of my life. Well, they've just said the rest of my life, there's nobody else. Right? And I said, no, they were the love of that part of your life. Your book, you're an author and your life is your book and you get to write each chapter. Now, you get to also decide whether you're writing a comedy or a tragedy. And so for me, I want to live a comedy, right? And and the other thing is a lot of people will go, especially when they get up to near retirement age, they start to write their conclusion.
Right.
And I'm like,
they talk like it too, right? Like,
right.
I used
I'm not
to.
writing a conclusion. Right. I'm not writing a conclusion. I'm gonna keep going. I have been to 30 countries around the world. I've been inside the pyramids of Giza. I've been on top of Machu Picchu. I climbed Mount Sinai. I've done all these things. I have spina bifida. right. I did all these things. Nothing can limit you except for what you tell yourself that you're going to limit yourself to. You can't say I can't and then not believe that you can't.
Right.
As Henry Ford would say, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
You're right. Some of my favorite quotes. Yep.
Yeah, you got to stay in that space. You, as Buddha would say, you create what you think you become. You create your world. Gandhi says you must be the change you want to see in the world. Krishna said you are the culmination of your thought. It's what you think is what you create. And for me, lying in that bed, I couldn't think I'm done. I had to think I'm a stuntman. I'm a fight director. I am doing these things. No matter what anybody else says. And so you got to keep your mind in play and keep moving forward.
I completely agree, and that's that's part of me doing my gratitude practice in the morning. Starting. I feel like it's like a refresh. You start in the morning with you start with reminding yourself of all the good in your life, right? And it just allows you to keep that space moving forward. The reminder of when other things come up, it's. I had, another great image. Actually, Hector Garcia had. I asked him about, what does gratitude mean to him, and he said, it's when, when I'm focusing on one thing that's not going right, but yet there's 99 other things that are going. It's one thing going wrong, and there's 99 things that are going right. It's like it's that moment when I turn my head, right? Like when I just reflect over here for that moment. That's gratitude because there's, so.
Well, let me add on to that.
Yeah, please.
You said the 99 kind of triggered something for me. We live in a predominantly positive world. And most people don't realize that we live in a predominantly positive world. But if you think about this, I live in Akron, Ohio. Cleveland is 30 miles north. And so if I had a job in Cleveland, I would commute 30 miles every day. I would probably pass 1,000 cars on the road every day. Right. Every day, driving up there, right? Every day, maybe. Probably not every day, but let's just say every day, I might see one fender bender off to the side of the road. Tonight on the news, the fender bender is going to be on there because it's the anomaly. What should be the headline story is that 999 cars made it safely to their destination. That's amazing. It's a miracle, right? Our world is predominantly positive. It is 99.9% positive, but it's only where we focus our minds. To turn off the news. If it's really that important, you'll find out about it.
That's my philosophy too.
Yeah, don't delve into it. Stay in the space of gratitude. Stay in the place of I live in a good world, and people are inherently good. And I believe that. I totally believe that. I think there are people who are doing bad things because they're in fear. On a very spiritual. If I go deeper into my little spirituality, is that all right with you?
Of course.
Okay, good. I am a firm believer in exactly what the Apostle John said, that God is love, right? But I believe, because of my studies, that we come to this space to experience our separation from that source through our own control of our fear. It's like we're sitting in a room that's made of love, and we have a fog machine right next to us with our hand on the dial. And we can crank it all the way up and not see the room, or we can crank it all the way down and see all the glory in the room, right? And so we have to realize that we are the ones in control of our positive or negative experience. We are the ones who are taking the life of ourselves and building it either fearfully or lovingly. And so for me, I want to love as many as I can and help as many as I can. I can't tell you how many times I go to a restaurant and the waiter's obviously having a bad, or the server's having a bad time. I had one woman who walked up to my table and she said, "I'm so sorry. This is the first thing she said to me. I'm so sorry. I'm having a bad day and you're going to get bad service." She actually said that, right? Now, the guy I was with instantly got mad. He was like just mad because I turned to her and said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Why don't you sit down and I'll handle your tables and I'll get you some lunch." She's like, "What?" Right? And then I took it upon myself to make sure she laughed and to get her into, and for the rest of the time I was in there, I was, "You okay? Everything good?" And I was really working that process. By the end of the time we were at lunch, she was laughing. She was hanging out at our table talking to us because we were giving her the positive experience. We were giving her the thing to make her feel good. And it also changed my friend's dynamic too.
Right.
Because he's like, "Oh, we are having a good time." And she is giving us good service. And it's really interesting. What you put out, is your choice. You don't have to be affected by other people's choices.
Right, and that's falling back on gratitude. I'm so grateful that being gratitude is a choice. You know what I mean? Like it's something you get to decide if you want to be grateful for something or not. It's not forced upon you. It's not pushed in your face. It's like and it's the same idea that where we get to decide what it all means, right? That's what you're saying. Right. So when something happens, honestly, everything is neutral until you label it straight up, right? And like it's and I've been talking about that a lot lately too. It's like the parable about the farmer. He gets he's plowing the field and then he gets a horse and that's great. They're like, "Well, you got a horse." He's like, isn't that great? He's like, "Well, we'll see." And then the horse, his son's out there with the horse and the horse breaks his son's leg and they go, "Well, isn't this a horrible thing?" And he goes, "Well, we'll see." And then the war starts and they have to take all the young men away. But his son can't go because of that. He's like, "Isn't this a great thing?" "Well, we'll see." It's like, it's such a everything, it's like if we could just step for a moment and go, "Well, we're not going to label anything bad or good," because honestly, you don't know, you know what I mean? We don't know what's going to happen next. It's like, I love your story about, about your accident and being in the hospital because think, when somebody hears that story, it could have stopped with, "Okay, he's in the hospital, he never moves again," right? That totally could have happened. That was within your choice because you could have decided, "Okay, that's my fate," right? But you made a choice to say, "I'm going to live, I'm going to do this, I'm going to strive," and then here you are. You talk about all the countries, the places, the people.
Right, and Hamlet said, "There is nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so," right?
Exactly.
That concept of your choice of a positive or negative is literally your whole life. It's you creating every aspect of life. You can sit here and focus on negative. Negative people will always have negative things to talk about because they're focused on the negative. Right? That's the way the subconscious mind works. But most people don't realize subconscious mind, when you look at it, it's a collection of memories of present moments, right? But it also is the partner for your achieving anything. Because when you consciously focus on it, your subconscious mind will show it to you. For instance, if you decide what kind of car you want to buy, and you say, "I'm going to buy a car. I like this kind of car. I want a Lexus or whatever," right? You say, "Okay." But then what happens is before you buy that car, you start seeing that car everywhere because your subconscious mind has kicked in. So if you're consciously in your present moment, taking your I am moment and wasting it on negativity, your subconscious mind is going to show you negative things. And you need to make sure that you take your moment and you live in gratitude, positive gratitude. Like, I'm not grateful for the crap that's coming into my life. I'm grateful for positive things, right? That's what gratitude is. It's being grateful for the positive effects of what's happening, right? So you want to look at your life in the aspect of gratitude. For me, I had an injury and I was done. it is the thing in my life that I'm most grateful for. Because if I hadn't had that experience, I would never have achieved the things that I've done. I would never have gone and climbed mountains and worked with stars and jumped off towers and had experiences with amazing people. I probably never would have married 3 women. So maybe that wasn't a good thing. But anyway, I'm kidding. That were all a good thing too. Those things in my life were most important because of the fact that that one moment back there that seemed so traumatic and hard, that one moment is something that really ignited a fire in me. So gosh, I can't help but be grateful for that moment, because I would not have lived. I go back to my family reunions, and like I said, I have 6 brothers and sisters, and most of them have all lived in the same 50 square miles their entire life. I've been to 30 countries. I lived all over the country. I lived everywhere. I'm truly the action hero of the family, because I have done so many things only because of the fact that I took the limitations off of myself and the limitations of others and the expectations of others. And I just did the things I loved and was passionate about. There used to be a motorcycle builder named Indian Larry, and his famous quote was, "Do what you love and the money will come." And I am living proof. I do it all the time. I've done it for years.
I practice a similar thing. Again, that intention in the morning. I have a friend that was on the podcast last year, and he's like, if you just get up and say out loud, today's going to be a great day for 3 weeks or whatever, your life's going to change. It's like,
absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, you're going to ask yourself, why was today a great day? Because you've already put that out there, and you're going to look for those moments that you just wouldn't have seen or wouldn't have thought of, given a second thought. But when you look back, you go, yeah, that was a great day. Like tomorrow, I'll ask myself this question. I'll remember I got to talk with John. You know what I mean? Like this is a great day. I get to, how amazing is it that I can sit here in my home and have a conversation with somebody I never met before. And learn, these things. I love doing this so much because I get to walk away and find more things to be grateful for. I do this podcast very selfishly. It's a total selfish endeavor. I'm glad I can share it, but honestly, it's about the conversation to me. Like it's being able to have this, have a conversation, meet somebody and have these moments.
But I think you're playing the karma game aggressively. I think you're trying to score more karma points than anybody else before you leave. That's why you do this thing. But I'm going to give you a run for the money, buddy.
Okay. Well, I do. I try to find new ways to always. I just want to create the space. Like I think I told you before. It's like all I want to do is be a catalyst for gratitude. I just want to create this space for it to exist. And there's so many ways to do that. Like you when you specifically just being present with somebody and letting them know they exist. That is being a catalyst for gratitude. When you talk to that lady and you said she mentions about the speaking, you stood there with her and talked to her about how she become a speaker. That was you being a catalyst for gratitude. Right. I mean, you're being present and with her. It's beautiful, and I love that, man. I really do.
Well, and we're all in this life thing together,
right?
As
much as the world wants to look like it's differently.
Let me tell you an interesting story. When what you put, they always say what you give, you get, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
In the year 2000, I went to Egypt and I traveled 20 days all through Egypt. I climbed Mount Sinai. I was in the pyramids. I did all kinds of crazy things. Everywhere I went in Egypt, I was treated like family, like a prince. I was treated incredibly well. When I went to Mount Sinai to climb Mount Sinai, I got to the hotel and I walked in. I met the manager. I spent an hour just chatting with the manager. Told him how much I loved his country, how much I enjoy it. He said, "What's your favorite thing?" He said, "What's your favorite food?" And I said, "Koshery and full sandwiches." And he says, That's the peasant food. What are you talking about? That's what we eat. That's not what the tourists eat. They want the shish kebabs and so that's no. So that night, dinner time comes around, and Mount Sinai is 3 hours out in the desert on the Sinai Peninsula. So dinner was an interesting, and hotel was a grand statement because it's a bunch of huts around the central building, right? Mm-hmm. And so dinner time comes around. We were all supposed to come to the central building between a certain time. and you had to be there to get your dinner because that's the only time food was going to be served. And so we went there, and we watched as these beautiful steak dinners were coming out of the kit, and they're going to every table around us. We're like, okay, and suddenly the door kicks open, and this giant bowl of koshery comes out and sits on our table, right? And then we're like, oh, so we ate the koshery, we finished the koshery, and then our steak dinner came, right? So he did that. So then, when you climb Mount Sinai, you start climbing at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So 1 o'clock, and the reason you do that is because when you reach the top, you get there just before sunrise, and you're watching the sunrise from the top of Mount Sinai, which, by the way, is amazing, right? So I start climbing at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's about a 4-hour climb, right? About 2:30, I guess, an hour and a half into the climb, I'm climbing in the darkness on the side of Mount Sinai, right? And I hear this voice say, John. I'm like, man, that was trippy hearing my name called out on the side of Mount Sinai, right? But it wasn't God. It was that manager from that hotel running up the mountain to give me a coat because he thought I was going to be cold at the top.
Oh, wow.
So by giving someone that... Now, so the next day, I came down from that mountain, and right at the base of the mountain is St. Catherine's Monastery. And it's a beautiful old Byzantine monastery. The incense was constantly burning. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And I'm walking through, and suddenly this guy says, "Hey, are you American?" I said, "Yeah, I'm American." He says, "Have you been having problems since you've been here?" I said, "No, not at all. Everybody's treating me like a prince." He says, "Everywhere I go, people want to fight me." 5 minutes later, I wanted to kick the guy's butt. He was a jerk, right? What you put out, if you're putting out positive things to be grateful for. When I walked up to that manager at that hotel, I said, "Hey, I love your country. I'm so grateful for the experience I'm having."
Right.
And look how it paid off. He brought me a coat. He climbed an hour and a half up a mountain to give me a coat. That's how I was treated. And that man is still deep in my memory. I will never forget that kindness that he gave, but he will never forget the fact that some guy came into his hotel, loved his country, loved his people, and really expressed and had a conversation with him. Egypt is an interesting thing. There was an ancient ruler named Sneferu, and Sneferu is known for one thing. He's known for growing Egypt to the largest it had ever been. But when you look at the books and the writings about Sneferu, he said he treated everyone as a brother or a friend. And then as the country grew and threats came to the country, he would say, our country is being, our empire is being threatened. We as a people, he brought it together as them as one, right? That brother or friend thing is huge. And if you can stick with that brother or friend, brother, sister, gender's not involved really, but brother or friend, if you can keep into the space that everyone's a brother and friend, some people are deeper in fear than you are, some people are less in fear than you are. But everybody's in the same human journey.
Right, and that's falling back on gratitude. I like to think we are all united in the fact that we all have things to be grateful for. It's not a race, creed, culture, or religion. It's just and when you, for example, I loved your story is so poignant because you came in, you saw this man, you shared your appreciation for his country, you sat in front of him, just somebody grateful. You just said in front of just grateful traveler, which is awesome, right? Right? And he saw you for who you were because you were just shining who you are and being grateful. That the next day or whatever, he's you made such an impression that he saw that the weather was going to change or it was going to be too cold, and he's like, "This man needs a coat." I mean, wow. I mean, right. This is my friend. I need to go make sure he's okay.
Right.
I'm going to spend these hours doing it. I mean, wow.
When you look at it from the aspect of spirituality, it's called being the bodhisattva. It's being that essence of pure love and consciously expressing it into the world. You're going somewhere and living that experience, trying to be that vibration, that gratitude or love vibration. That by carrying that with you, you are actually living a higher purpose because you're not only changing yourself, you're changing the world around you, and that's the key. We all need to come to a place where we are all brothers and friends, and that we're all living that bodhisattva inside of us and expressing it to everybody, realizing that we don't end it where our skin is.
Right.
we affect everything around us.
Back to that whole, back to the mentality of going into a place and making it better than it was when you leave, having
Right.
the space coming in. That's exactly what you're talking about. And
In boating terms, it's leave a positive wake behind you.
oh, there you go. I like
Yeah.
that. Leave a positive wake behind you. Right. We're just in the ocean and we're leaving positive wakes behind us as we pass
Yep.
through. Yeah. That's a great image. I love that. I think that's a good place to just kind of wrap up here. I know you've got a busy morning. I'd love if you could share where people could, if people want to reach out to you or hear what you're doing about, or what's the best place to get a hold of John?
Easiest way to get a hold of me is corporateactionhero.com. You'll find my LinkedIn page. You'll find my daily vlog. I put out a daily video. And when I say daily, I mean daily, every day, a small positive reinforcement video on there. My Interaction Hero podcast is on there. But for your audience, I'd also like to share my super secret podcast called Spirit Cafe, which I do with a lovely woman named Tamara Zoner, who is the happiness coach. You should consider her for your show because she would be a great guest.
Introduce us.
She's on Podmatch. So,
okay.
So Tamara Zoner. She's an amazing individual. She and I do a podcast from the perspective of recovering Catholics who are now expanding our spirituality. And so it's an interesting thing. That's how you get a hold of me.
Okay. Well, John,
can
thanks.
I add one more thing?
Yes, please.
I'm giving your audience my 5F workbook and as a free gift. Now, I said free. My word is always good. That means when you go to this link, you don't have to leave an email address or anything. It's just a link to download the book. Now, if you go to my website, you're not going to find it. You're only going to find it in the link that is provided for you by Chris here. And so I'll make sure Chris gets that to put in the show notes or whatever.
Thanks, John. I really appreciate that gift, man. This has been awesome. I'm so grateful for our time today, and I know that hopefully we can do a round 2 at some point because I feel like there's a lot more we could talk about, more stories, and I definitely wanted to hear even inside your initial story. I was curious, and we don't have time now. I was curious, I wanted to hear the story about how you got your first job after coming out of recovery, but we'll have to save that for another time because I know there was some other really. And I wanted to hear, even. Talking about going to the USO and going and talking to the troops. I know you got to have some. Anyways, just for food for thought for another time.
We'll do it again.
Okay. All right. There we go. I got John's commitment there, people. And he's a man of his word.
I am a man of my word. And
yes.
I enjoyed this greatly, and I would love to do it again. It'd be great.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, man. Well, I'm Chris with John. Just reminding you guys have a lot to be grateful for, and just to go out there and look for the good in people. Look for happiness. Because if you look for, you will find. So you all have an excellent day, and thank you.